You're now tapped into GoLightly Radio with Amanda Nicole, an uplifting and informative podcast for crystal lovers, spiritual seekers, and intuitive boss babes learning to manifest abundance and fulfill their soul's purpose. We're coming together to provide modern insight into the power of crystal healing, honoring daily spiritual practice, and why aligning your chakras is more important than keeping up with the Kardashians. Here's your host and crystal bestie, Amanda Nicole.
Hey guys, welcome to GoLightly Radio. My name is Amanda Nicole, and I am your crystal bestie. This week's episode is so very special to me for many reasons, one of them being that this is our 50th episode. I absolutely love doing this. I love talking about crystals with you all, and I'm just so honored. So thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting the podcast. Also, we have a very special guest with us today. You guys know that I was certified by Hibiscus Moon and that I am so inspired by not only her work, but her authenticity and her infectious energy. She's been a mentor to me and has impacted my crystal journey so much. I just have such a profound level of respect for all that she's done and continues to do for the crystal community. Hibiscus Moon is a former science department head turned crystal healer and self-proclaimed geo-geek extraordinaire. She's the founder of Hibiscus Moon Crystal Academy and author of the book Crystal Grids, How and Why They Work. You can download her free Create Sacred Spaces with Crystals e-kit over at www.hibiscusmoongift.com. All right, guys, so I am so excited and honored to welcome to the show my teacher, mentor, and friend, Hibiscus Moon. Welcome to GoLightly Radio.
Thank you, Amanda. I am so happy to be here because, as I always tell you, I'm so proud of you. You're one of our trailblazers, and this is really exciting to be on the 50th podcast because I listen to your podcast. I think it's one of the best crystal podcasts out there.
Well, I am honored. It has been so hard to keep this a secret because I know that we've talked about having you on the podcast before, but having you here for the 50th episode means so much to me. So thank you so much for being here.
Same here.
So I talk about you all the time. And I have discussed many times in past episodes about how I was actually certified by you. I look up to you. You inspire me so much. But for anyone that's listening for the first time, can you actually tell all of us how you got started with crystals?
Okay. Well, first of all, I talk about you all the time, too. Okay, so this goes way back. One of my first memories, I'm 3 years old, and my father has a museum, I think it's a Museum of Natural History book, and they have a big mineral collection there at that museum. And he would take us there, and he had the book, and there was these amazing photographs of crystals, gorgeous crystals, in their raw form and then faceted into jewelry. But I was just so fascinated by them. I was always in that book. My nose was always in that book. And I knew something special. There was something special about them. And like that something so linear and looking like a piece of art was coming out of the ground, because they would show like where the people would get the crystals. And I just almost couldn't wrap my brain around it, wait, how? I don't understand. And I was just always fascinated by them, fascinated. And then I was always really into metaphysical stuff, and no one had to push me into that realm. I was always into that stuff, but I also was like a science nerd later in life too. But it was weird because I thought I had to compartmentalize those two things and didn't realize that they really fit together quite well, like two perfect puzzle pieces. So I realized that later in life.
Oh my gosh, I think that that's so cool that you've been into crystals for so long. And then how did that turn into you teaching others about crystals? Like, how did the academy start?
Well, I really have to say that was not my doing at all. That was really more of a co-creation. I started off on YouTube when YouTube first started, 2007. So I think that like equates to Jurassic Park World or whatever, for internet. And I went on there because I was looking for other people to share my passion of crystals with, and like crystal gridding. There was very, very little information anywhere online on that. There was no book, like there was sections in books here and there a little bit, but not enough information to satisfy me. I did find a small community and like one guy that was teaching or showing what he was doing with his crystal grids. So it became kind of like a little community. And then I started doing my videos on YouTube around 2009. I was still a teacher, science department head. So all you saw in those videos is my hands with the crystals, just hands and crystals, no face. And so my old followers remember that. And they just were always asking, we were a community, and they would say, well, you're a teacher and you know about the science and you talk about the crystals. Can you teach a class on that? And I actually knew how to do that back before online classes were a thing. I got my master's when it was like a brand new thing in curriculum instruction and technology. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so back in 2009, we started with that. And then people asked, we did a class on crystal grids. And they said, can you write a book on that? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It was like the universe was just naturally opening up these doors, and I was following through because it resonated with me. It would feel like something exciting within me. And then once there was a couple of classes out there, people were like, well, can't we create like a certification program and get like a certification going for this? And I was like, yeah, we can do that. So it was always a co-creation with everybody and the universe. I feel like it was not me. It wasn't an accident. There are no accidents. It was just something that was meant to be, and it beautifully unfolded. And I think it's a really good testament to listening to your intuition too, because I was really following my intuition there. It was scary because I left my position of science department head because at one point I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? This is getting really busy. It was sort of exploding, and I can't do both. And me just showing my hands in videos is kind of stupid. So I left my teaching position because the crystals were calling me more strongly. Not because I didn't like the teaching position. I loved it, but I definitely was being called strongly to the crystals. And it was a scary thing to do. People were like, but you have tenure, you have a pension, you have all those things that root chakra wants, and I was like, nope, I know this is the right thing to do. And it certainly was.
And I'm so grateful. And I think that so many people listening can relate to finding crystals and just immediately being drawn to them. And for me, when I started really working with them, I didn't fully understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And so that's when I started to explore learning kind of the science behind everything, because I had a ton of people in my life that I wanted to share crystals with, but I wanted to be able to explain more than just I can feel them to people that maybe had never worked with a crystal or and this is years ago. I mean, now crystals are so mainstream. It's just like everybody is aware of crystals. And so I think that for me, when I found you, I could feel that you had that metaphysical side to you, and that like really spoke to me. And then you also, just listening to you explain about crystals was like, I could have sat and listened to you, and I did, for hours, because it's just so interesting to me. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, for everyone listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my law of attraction intention alarm. Sorry.
I love it. No, law of attraction.
At 11:11.
Oh, perfect. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, for people who are just getting into crystals, what is a simple way for them to explain to people who maybe are a bit skeptical that like this is real, like there's more to it than just the woo-woo aspect?
Yeah, it's all about, and I found out by accident, throwing the science at at it. Now, I know that's like, well, you're like, if you don't know anything about the science behind crystals, that's hard to do. But I feel like it's an important thing to realize and learn a little bit about the science behind how crystals work, because it really makes people so confident in what they're doing and what they're teaching. And it makes skeptics sit up and listen. They pay attention. When I was working in the school as a science department head, they knew that I was into crystals. They would come to me as last resort, like, okay, nothing else is working. What crystal's good for this, And because they knew I could explain the science behind it, they didn't question it. They did it and they were into it, So if I could convince the most skeptical of minds in a science department, because I'm backing it up with science, you can certainly explain it to the family or friend that's kind of like poo-pooing it and saying, oh, you're so gullible, you believe all this junk. When you start explaining the science, and you might have realized this, Amanda, they're like, oh, okay. And they sit up and listen, they take it seriously, and they're not so skeptical anymore, and they become more open-minded.
Yeah, it's really funny. My father is like the last person you would think would ever be into crystals. And he now has crystals on him. Like, he has them in his pocket. And it's just so funny because anyone who knows him, I'm like, my dad works with crystals, and he'll text me like, when's the full moon? And I know why he's asking. And it just makes me so happy because he saw how they were influencing me. And he obviously noticed that. And so it like piqued an interest, I think. And now it's just so wild to me. So when people like approach me and they're kind of like, I don't know, I'm like, I've been here before. Like, I can explain to you. And that's why like taking your course helped me so much, because I just felt so confident in explaining kind of what I was feeling so that other people would be able to understand as well.
Yeah. And science has a way of doing that. And believe me, I'm not one of those people who says that science is the end all be all. Science is very young, relatively young. We don't know it all. We're learning new things all the time. But in today's day and age, when you can explain something with science, that's what really, gets the people to, like I said before, sit up and listen. Yeah. And also too, I think once people gain that confidence for themselves and they start making these big transformations, working with crystal energy, other people around you, like you said, for you, notice that happening. And they're like, wait, but I want in on this. Like, yeah. how is that working again? How are you doing that with crystals? What is it that you do? How do they work again? Why do they work? They're interested because they see you, making all these strides and transformations and you're working with crystal energy. They want to know.
Have you noticed that more people are signing up now for your courses than ever before?
Oh my God, 2020, we didn't expect that at all. The year that we had in 2020, we're all well aware, but it brought people, I don't know if it was because people had more time to sit with themselves and think. Definitely, I know anxiety went through the roof, and people were coming to us from all walks that you never would have expected. And we had the busiest year ever with the course. And definitely, I always think that, okay, this is definitely peaked now, like I thought back in 2015 that crystals had peaked, like that was, they're so popular now, they're more popular than they've ever been, but it just keeps getting more and more popular. Yeah. And it continues to grow and grow and grow. And we get more and more people registering, interested in the course. I don't know where the peak is, if there is a peak, or if it's just going to continue to go up. I mean, it's so much so now, and I know you're very aware of this, that there are shortages in crystals. There's shortages in a lot of things these days, right? But there's shortages in crystals because so many people have bought them up and just like scooped them up. I think there was some kind, I'm not on TikTok, but there was some kind of like TikTok Moldavite.
Yeah.
a viral thing that happened and like all the moldavite disappeared.
Yeah.
And there was already restrictions on mining moldavite, and it was already a restricted mineral. But now because of the TikTok moldavite viral thing, that was a real thing, right?
Yeah. And now I just heard this morning, it's funny because I'm not on TikTok, but my husband said he was talking to one of our friends in the industry and he's like, something's going on with carnelian on TikTok right now. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, it's like trending. I guess I was like, I got to stay on top of this because you never know what's what the next crystal is going to be. But apparently,
I hate to burst a bubble on that carnelian thing, but I recently learned that most of the carnelian, this really saddens me, is dyed.
Mm-hmm.
Like over 90%.
I know. Do you have like a favorite crystal in like an alternative to carnelian for people?
Yeah, orange calcite.
For sure.
Yeah, it's easy to get. It's inexpensive. Nobody's dying that. At least not yet. I mean, I was surprised to find out about that one.
Oh, great. And another question for you. So how can we avoid crystal fakes? Because everyone listening is buying crystals, is working with crystals. And I know that you're an expert in the field. And I know that you're pretty passionate, as am I, about crystal fakes. Is there any advice you can give?
Oh, it's a tough one because of what we just talked about, crystal fakes are on the rise because people want to cash in, unfortunately. The best advice I can give is to get educated and be informed. And that takes a little time, but whenever you see an article about crystal fakes, read it, a video on YouTube. There's so many out there now that I can't just like give a quick list of tips of things to look out for. And some are really good and hard to figure out. More and more is happening now with the shortages that we're experiencing. Best advice I can give, if you don't mind, is to have people, I have a free guide for this. If you just Google up and you can download this free guide, I have a blog post. I have many blog posts on fakes, but this one, fakes, and more crystal fakes.
I love that.
Google that with Hibiscus Moon. Fakes, and more crystal fakes, Hibiscus Moon, and that blog post will come up. And in that blog post, you can download the free guide. And there's a lot of tips and things to look for, little tests you can do to try to, suss out the fakes, because there's so many and so many different categories with all the minerals, that it's difficult and more coming out all the time.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I'm always super aware of. I'm so grateful because we actually, we travel a lot to select crystals. And so being able to shop in person has helped us a lot because I can connect with the pieces and we can talk with the people. And it's just been awesome in that sense. So that's one of my favorite things about going to like all the gem shows or traveling like we do is like actually meeting the people who are offering the crystals and kind of being able to have that like in-person connection. It's been so helpful because we can ask questions about them and like just get the history on like where the crystals came from. And it's always, for me, that's one of my favorite things about crystals is learning about like where they've come from and where like, it's just wild to me to think about like from a crystal's perspective, all that they've seen in their lifetime. And I know that we don't get the full story because some of them are millions of years old, but it's really cool to be able to connect with people that can kind of tell you a little bit about the crystal. I love a good story. So I love to like hear and learn about the crystal's journey. So
me too. And I love that you do that you select your crystals that way, you hand select, and that you go to them rather than just ordering from a warehouse sight unseen.
Yeah.
That's how I did it too. When I used to sell crystals, it was all from either a gem show or a warehouse where I visited personally. I was lucky enough to have one nearby and could hand select and see how special they were. And especially Tucson, when you go to Tucson, I know you got to go twice this year, didn't you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we were there twice, just a few weeks apart. It was amazing.
It is amazing because that's where like the real miners, mineral characters are. And there's such interesting people.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And there's so many, like every time we go to a show, I find and I discover new crystals. Like we've been to so many, but there's just always something new and like something to learn about. So would you say Tucson is your favorite gem show?
Well, I absolutely, yes, hands down. Now, I have to say, I've never been to the Denver Gem Show. I know you have, so I can't compare it to that. But I know Tucson is bigger, and I've been to local ones in like North Carolina, and I'm always like disappointed because nothing holds a candle to Tucson.
Yeah, it's exciting. And do you have right now a crystal that you're searching for? Like, does Hibiscus Moon have a wish list or?
It's funny because I do have a Tucson folder over there. And whenever I have a little wish list, I write down crystals that I'm going to look for when I go next time. One of the ones that I checked my list too, when I saw that question and I was like, oh yeah, okay, let me go look at my list and see what I have on there. So one thing that I've been wanting, I have both of the crystals individually, a smoky quartz and Amazonite that have grown together from Denver. I have a feeling that combination that have grown up together is going to be really, really special. I have a strong inner knowing, a calling to that. Yeah. So it's an interesting mix of detoxing and transmuting energy from the smoky quartz with communicating your higher truths from the Amazonite. But I feel like, yeah, you could work with those two crystals individually, but there's something really special calling to me. And I've passed them by. Amanda, have you done this in Tucson and not done it? And you get that call later, like on you pass by millions of crystals when you're there. And you wish you had them all, but you can't. So, but there's certain ones that call you back, and that's one of the ones. So when I get back to Tucson, definitely making a beeline to wherever those are.
I love that. No, I completely can relate. It's just like, it'll be like even days or weeks or like, it doesn't matter how long after, they'll just kind of like drop into your awareness. And that's how you know, like, you need to revisit that. There's a reason. So that's a good one. I love when crystals grow together. I think that it's so special, like for them to just love each other so much that they want to spend eternity together. It's just that's like a very romantic thought to me.
It is. And it's obviously a common like attraction thing because there are crystals that have common combinations that grow together, like amethyst and calcite. Often in those amethyst geodes, you'll see like calcite points sticking out. That's a common combination too.
And I want to ask you, because we have noticed that people love, our tribe especially loves when there are rainbows in crystals. What causes that?
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting because I like using rainbows, especially for people to get out of a depression, or some kind of difficulty that's holding them back. But the rainbows come from, and that saying, oh my God, I just saw a meme this morning that I had like posted 10 years ago. You know how Facebook says like 10 years ago, you said this, and it said, you can't have rainbows without the rain. Mm-hmm. And so you can't get a rainbow in a crystal without damage. So some kind of damage occurred, usually an interior fracture, but the damage causes kind of a veil within where there's like an imperfection in the crystal growth, or an extreme temperature change will cause an interior fracture. And the ordeal the crystal's been through brings this stunning benefit of the rainbow to light. So I like to, like I said, work with them for depression or uplifting the spirit or just being more positive. And I think it's great that it goes right along with that saying that you can't have rainbows without the rainstorm first.
I love that. And it's so fitting because it's been raining here for the past week. And so I'm definitely going to be looking for some rainbows because it's just a favorite. But another question I have is, with certain crystals, what causes them to be so saturated in color? Like, you know how you can, for amethyst, for example, like some are much paler, some have like a very like rich coloring.
Yep.
How does that work?
There's some crystals are known for their saturated color, like the Uruguayan amethyst. I call them grape jelly amethyst. They're so deeply purple. Oh, they look like grape jelly. And that is from their locale. They're from where they're from, but that's due to the geology of that area that gives them that coloring. So there are lots of variables to this. And it depends on the mineral too, but impurities or elements initially cause the color in gems, but then some geological processes like different types of heating, different levels of heating, different levels of radiation, oxidation, precise temperature can affect the color. And even afterwards, like if you have an Uruguayan amethyst, do not put it in the sunlight, because the Uruguayan amethyst, what makes it that color, those electrons, I don't know how sciencey you want me to get.
Sciencey as you want.
I can really geek out on this, but they're unstable. So if they get put in UV light from sunlight or another UV light, they'll start to pop off and leave, and the color will become less intense and will lighten up. So, so that can change the color. So they can lighten or intensify or even completely change the color, like go from amethyst to a citrine color with heat. So there's all kinds of geological processes, but I feel that it's also the energy of the crystal itself that can contribute to the color sometimes as well. So it's like, is it the chicken or the egg paradox? Did it get that color because of the energy, or is it, the other way around?
Yeah. And what is one of your favorite ways? Because I know that you've spoken a lot about cleansing or retuning crystals using sound. So that's actually one way that I am not very familiar with. So why is that one of your favorites? Is that still?
That's my favorite, absolute favorite way. Okay. Because you don't need to worry about, yes, putting them in the sunlight is effective, but am I going to fade my crystals? Yeah. Or putting them out overnight and say it rains and some of the crystals are more soft, that means they'll lose some of their luster from the water. So like a selenite, is one that will lose luster from getting a lot of rain on it. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about any of those things. Putting some crystals in salt, some people like to do that. That can be caustic to some minerals. So sound is safe no matter what. I also feel like it's the easiest. Like I don't have to run around picking up all my crystals and putting them in an area. Although it's fun and I've done it, but I'm lazy. I'm also very practical. So whatever is like the easiest way for me to get something done with the least amount of effort possible, I'm all about that. Yeah. So sound is good, and high amplitude sound. So that just means a lot of energy, make it loud. Yeah. Now people will ask me, so I saw these tuning forks and there's just a special frequency and they're specifically, at that frequency to be able to retune or cleanse crystals. And I say, no. It doesn't matter what frequency. Any high amplitude, loud sound will retune the crystal. So I like to use a singing bowl just because it makes me feel really relaxed and in the zone. And I feel like the crystals really like it too. But technically, you can just take the radio and turn it up loud and have that speaker in the room with your crystals. As long as it's loud, it's going to retune them, reset them.
For sure. And I remember specifically one night I had put out all my crystals and it wasn't supposed to rain. And I woke up to the sound of rain and I was like, oh my goodness. And like sat up and got out of bed so quickly. And I was like, because I had a bunch of selenite outside. So I completely understand that you definitely take a risk when
I mean, they're not going to melt. I've done lots of experiments. You know, some people make it sound like they're just going to melt away like the Wicked Witch of the West under the water. And that's not what happens. But, well, if you put halite out there, halite is salt. So that will melt away. I've done an experiment with selenite. I put it in salt water for 7 days. It didn't damage it as much as I thought it was going to, but it didn't look as pretty. Yeah. So, you know, there's lots of things to be careful of when you're doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And how often are you cleansing your crystals energetically? Because there's some people that say like you need to do it every day. And there's certain crystals that I understand do benefit from cleansing after like a session, or if you've been going through something really traumatic or you're really working with that crystal. But like day to day, like, is it something that every full moon you're putting your crystals out, or how often do you think that we really need to be?
Yeah, no, I do not put my crystals out every full moon. I know it's a fun thing to do. Certain special moons, I get an inner knowing and I'll do that, but I don't subscribe to the belief of, there's a lot of dogmatic stuff around what we do with crystals. And one of them is certain crystals don't ever need to be cleansed, and some crystals need to be cleansed quite often, and if somebody touched it and all of that. I lean to the side of the crystals, they're more stable than us. Okay, so we're the ones that need more of the retuning than the crystals do. But when you've been working with a crystal a lot, or it's been through maybe, you know, a high amplitude event or something like that, or like I wear a crystal all the time, every day, and after a while I feel like it needs a retuning, then I will go ahead and do that. And I will do that with sound. Sometimes if I feel like it needs a long, you know, a really good reset, I will bury it in the ground and give it what I call a stone vacation.
I love that.
Let it stay there until I feel like it's ready to come out. But I'm definitely not one of those who subscribes to, you know, you need to make sure you're cleansing every week, every full moon, all the crystals. And then, oh, by the way, kyanite and selenite never need to be cleansed, and they cleanse all your other crystals. And I just don't find this stuff to be true. I don't have scientific evidence, but like I said, that's not everything, but there's no scientific evidence to back up why that would be the case. And in fact, there's more evidence to back up why that would not be the case. And I've just not found it to be true. A lot of these things, you got to do it yourself, experiment with it and try it. And please, if anybody's doing these things out there and it's been working for them, I always say, keep on trucking and don't let anything that I say or anybody else says derail you. You obviously are doing something, it's working for you, continue doing that. But it's just not something I've found to be true. And for many of my students have found the same. And I'm always encouraging people to experiment. Try it out, see what happens. What do you think?
Yeah. And I noticed that, like, especially when people first start getting into crystals, it can be very overwhelming to be like, I have to remember to cleanse them. And like, there's so much that goes into it. And so I'm always trying to remind people that like, just working with the crystal, just like appreciating it and like honoring it and caring for it is, in my opinion, the most important part of working with crystals. So
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree with you.
Is there a crystal right now that you're working with? Like, is there one in particular that is like your go-to right now?
Yes. She's turned out to be quite special. I didn't realize how special she was. Her name is Jocelyn, by the way. And she told me her name. I don't usually name my crystals.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, but she told me that was her name. She was a Christmas gift to me from my husband. And she's a large rose quartz sphere from old stock. So I know you know what that means, but for people that don't know, it's old stock rose quartz. And it's hard to find this kind of rose quartz in the new mines, in the new rose quartz that they're mining out. It's very deeply, like, it's a deep colored rose, very dark, very vibrant. She's got such energy, and she was found in a antique store. Yeah. And they told us a story that she was, and she has a stand, and that she and the stand have never been separated. So we made sure we, got both of them together. My husband made sure, and I saw her, and it was one of those ones that I passed by and then couldn't stop thinking about. And thank goodness he knew. He went and got it for me. And she has turned out to be so special. And since then, I've had other people tell me stories about her who are seers, who see things. And they actually coincide with what the antique store owner told me, and that she has been used since around the 1800s, and and the stand is handmade and created at that time too, you can see, and was used with people. How did they put it? Like the Victorian era spiritualists that would get together, but used for good in good ways, and to help people tap into their higher selves. But she has been helping me through a time like I've had no other in my life. And I've been working with her steady since I got her on Christmas. And she is like what's the word I'm looking for? My steady, just like my rock, quite literally.
Oh my gosh. I love that she waited for you. That's I'm a huge believer that crystals will wait like years for their
I loved your podcast on that, by the way, because it so resonated with me. And I was like, yes, that so happens. That's so true.
I've just experienced it like personally, and then with like clients, and it's just incredible because there's so many times where that crystal should have been sold or adopted. And it's just, they know there's just this, like you said, like a knowing. And so I think that's awesome. Where do you keep her?
Well, she moves depending on what I'm doing. Like I wanted to keep her on our fireplace mantle, but I've been working with her, so she hasn't been there very much. She looks very beautiful there, and she likes it there. But right now she's on my meditation altar, and she's been in a crystal grid. But right now I'm working with her personally every day.
Amazing. And so you mentioned grids. I know you have your book. We offer it on the website. We sell a ton of them. What was it about gridding that really fascinated you? Because the way that you explain them is, I love it. It's like such a easy to understand, like the step-by-steps. But what about crystal gridding do you love?
I don't know what made me so drawn to crystal grids, but when I found that guy, and I would tell you who he is, but he's no longer on YouTube, doing crystal grids, it was the first I'd heard. Well, I'd read about them in books, but it was the first I saw someone like really putting them to practical use. And I read about them in books, but I'd never done one. And, I knew all about the vision boards and the law of attraction stuff. And I don't know, none of it really resonated with me. I would do my own visualizations and things like that. But when I saw him doing the crystal grids and the way he was doing them, something just clicked. And I said, oh, and everything started falling into place for me, like crop circles from UFOs, or, wherever we want to contemplate that they're coming from, that this all tied in together. And things just started clicking together for me, on the scientific side as well as metaphysical side, on the physics side. And I just started seeing how this can be a really powerful support for us and a really powerful tool. So I started experimenting with them. And sure enough, every crystal grid I've done has worked for whatever its purpose without fail. And so then I started talking about it with other people because I wanted to share my experiences with other people on YouTube. And we kind of had like a little community going, and everybody was having these wonderful, amazing experiences with them. Now look at what crystal grids has grown up into. It's exploded.
I know. I just even like going through like on like social media, seeing some of these grids they're breathtaking. Like what people do is just amazing. It's so inspiring to me. I get so many ideas, like, cause I always have at least one grid going at all times. So I have like always like ideas for like my next one, because it's become really popular for people to for me, it's kind of like a vision board using crystals. And I'm all about that. Like, I love the physical kind of like, just representation of whatever intention it is that I'm focused on. So I love that. And I love that more and more people are getting into working with crystals like that, because that's something that I get asked a lot is, like, crystals, they can be very addicting. Like, I'm the first to say I'm addicted to crystals, because it's just, there's so many of them and I want to love them all. And so what I never want to happen is for someone to just start acquiring a ton of crystals and then not know what to do with them, because I don't want crystals to end up just like on somebody's shelf, or just that's not what I believe that their purpose is. So that's part of actually the reason we started the podcast, is because I wanted to kind of give people who are just getting into crystals kind of maybe like a guide of like how I work with them personally, because I can think of like, throughout my whole day involves crystals, and I'm sure it's the same for you. But crystal gridding is a great way to kind of incorporate the crystals that you've already have, or give you a reason to buy more, and kind of just create something beautiful. So I'm so grateful for your book and for your teachings on grids, because it's helped me a lot. So thank you for writing that.
Thank you. That was my total pleasure. And I likewise am grateful that you do this podcast to give people practical ways to work with crystals in their lives, because that's one of the most common questions I get. You're right. Crystals do encourage us to hoard. And people will be like, I hear it all the time. They tell me, I've got all these crystals. I've collected all these crystals. I'm just called to them, but I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And they need practical, advice or ideas on, okay, here's the reasons why you are attracted to these crystals, and here's how to work with them as an ally. And I'm like you, I'm, like I said, very practical. They're worked into my day. I don't even realize sometimes how much I'm doing like crystal stuff all day long, but it's so much a part of my practical daily routine, not so much ceremonial, just practical, easy from morning, noon to night, and I don't even realize it, because I see people on Instagram with these, like you said, the really beautiful crystal grids. They're gorgeous. I don't do those. My crystal grids are simple. And, or I see them with these elaborate ceremonial ritual things going on. And I'm like, oh my God, I get sucked into that. It's great. It's beautiful. But in actuality, most people give up on that because they don't have the discipline or the time, or it just gets old, and they're like, I tried working with crystals and it got tiring, doing all that stuff. And I'm like, well, it doesn't need to be like that at all. And I think it's even more effective when it's just part of your practical routine.
Yeah. And something else that you talk about a lot that I'm super grateful that you've touched on is crystal chaos, like having so many crystals. And that's a thing. Like, for me personally, I like to be working with like one or maybe just a few. And I actually learned that from you when I was taking your course, about really getting to know like the crystal, being in tune with the crystal. And that's helped me so much, because when I first started getting into crystals, I wanted all of them. Like, there's a purpose for each one. And I was like, I need to have all of them. But now it's more like you all have like one crystal that I'm working with day to day, or even for like extended periods of time. But I just find it to be such like, it's more of like an intimate, like I bond with the crystal differently when there's just one of them. So
yep.
Is there one that you don't leave home without? Like, do you always have one crystal with you?
This little amethyst point that I've been wearing for years and years. It's not gorgeous. It's not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. But I have quite a bond with it. And what's funny is people sense the energy of this crystal, and they come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I love that crystal. It's so beautiful." And it's really, I mean, you're looking at it right now, Amanda. It's not. And my husband's always like, "Why are they all so attracted to that?" I'm like, I think they sense the energy and the good vibes from it is what it is.
Yeah.
They think it's beauty that's attracting them, but it's like, it's changed color quite a bit since I've worked with it, worn it all these years. It's not a beauty. It's chipped up. And people will always say, "That's the most beautiful crystal."
Oh my
and
goodness.
it just is what it brings that out in them.
Yeah. And, it's so well loved by you.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So I think that people are picking up on that. It's just like when you meet somebody who's, when we meet people and they're just full of like light or love and you're just so attracted to that person. It's kind of like that in a crystal that you've got there. So
yeah, it's the same thing.
how do you travel with crystals? So this is something like a personal question that I'm going to ask because we are traveling all the time and I want to bring a few with me. What's like a safe way that you transport crystals? Like how do you keep them in your pocket?
Well, okay. I have a little travel mojo bag that I take with my crystals, and there's only 2 or 3 crystals in there. Turquoise and hematite. And then there's a little like Buddha charm that I got that's a protective thing for traveling. It has turquoise in it and a little protective prayer inside of it. And then I also have my nonna's Sicilian grandmother's protective Maria of travel card. There was like I don't know the exact name of it, but it was hers. She always had it and she used it when she traveled over on ship overseas. And so I keep that all together. It's all good travel juju stuff. So it's protective travel stuff. And turquoise, Native Americans saw it as a stone to help protect during travel. And hematite is very grounding. And so I keep them together because if I sense any kind of jet lag, physically, I can use the hematite to help ground by just rubbing it on the bottom of my feet and just kind of doing like a little foot massage. And I put my bare feet on it while on a plane, when I get off the plane, and all of that. So that I always take with me when I'm traveling for the protective purposes and as well as keeping my energy up and not affected by jet lag. I'm not sure if you were also asking though, like traveling and getting through TSA with crystals and stuff like that, because that's a different that I have experience with, but that's a different question.
My goodness. Me too. I remember the first time I was going through and I always have a crystal. I keep like small crystals in like my bra. That's like my thing. And so I remember like it just dawned on me as I was about to walk in that I was like, oh my goodness, like what if they asked me like what, like to take, like you don't think, because like you said, like I'm just so used to having them on me. I just think that everybody has crystals with them, but it's sometimes funny to explain to people like what I'm like, no, it's a crystal. It's my friend.
They're scanning, if they scan you through that thing, that big X-ray machine, that big monster, and they see these like rocks on your boobs. Now, what is that?
I don't know though. For me, I just think everyone does it. So I'm sure it's happened more than once.
I had to stop doing that because I kept forgetting that they were there.
And they fall.
And I'd take my bra off at night and they'd come rolling out onto the floor and something broke. And I was, okay, I'm not doing that anymore because I can't remember.
Yeah. That's another question I have for you. When crystals break, it's heartbreaking. Like I feel it in my soul. And I understand that there's a purpose and there's a reason for it. What are some ways that you've, what have you done with crystals that have broke before?
Well, it depends. Usually if they break like in 2 big pieces, I feel like that is definitely a sign that it's meant to be given to someone. And the broken crystal, that's okay. Broken piece of the crystal, that's okay. So it's meant to be shared. Mm-hmm. If it's a crystal that's like, oh my gosh, I was using that as a tower in my crystal grid, and I will glue it back together. Mm-hmm. I will use a silicone-based glue because if it's quartz is silicon dioxide. So the silicone-based glue, it mimics the molecules and glue it back together. Did it dampen the energy a little bit? Yes, it did. I will give it a stone vacation after I've broken it for sure, because that's high amplitude energy that broke that crystal. So before I do anything with it, I will give it a stone vacation, put it in the ground, let it stay there. And I have a spot in my yard. By the way, if anybody's going to do a stone vacation, make sure you put a very clear marker, because the stones have a tendency to scoot away and you'll never find them again.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
I've done that. There's crystals that now belong to our yard because
yeah, it's funny how they do that. I don't know if they're actually scooting away or what happens, but I have a Hote statue in front of the house that has like a little offering bowl, and I'll bury them right there at his feet. Okay. So I know where they are.
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
That's awesome. One thing I wanted to ask you, since I have you here, is so inspiration is huge for me. I'm so inspired by so many different things, but because you're somebody who I look up to greatly, I was wanting to know who or what inspires you.
Oh my gosh. Well, you inspire me. My students inspire me big time. And I'm not being fake in any way when I say that, because you guys really motivate me and teach me so much. And I'm so proud. As far as like who inspired me before I got all into this and still inspires me, Katrina Raphael. She's like one of the crystal OGs from the harmonic convergence time. I know this is before a lot of you were born, but 1987 was called the harmonic convergence, and it was a big like crystal awakening that happened on the planet. And there were all these like new age books about crystals coming out, and Shirley MacLaine was writing about them. And so she's another one. Katrina Raphael. Joy Gardner is another crystal OG writer from the 80s that I really look up to. Those are two of my favorite gurus, Joy Gardner and Katrina Raphael. And then there's some prolific crystal authors that I really, really love. Philip Permit and Robert Simmons. And the reason why I really like them, you might be wondering why I'm leaving some other popular ones out, is that they include like a really holistic view of crystals. They're very prolific in their writing, but their science that they speak of, they include science. Some authors don't include any science or geology at all. And for me, I have to have the whole kit caboodle. And they do include the science, and it's reliable science as well as the metaphysical side of things. Sometimes I notice people try to sneak science into their crystal books, and this is happening more and more. I'm not going to name any of them because we have more crystal books out on the market than ever, and they try to sneak some science in there, but it's evident that they don't really have a good solid understanding of the science, and they sneak it in there as if it can just be stated in any old which way. It's evident to anyone who knows science, whether you understand it or not, in the way that it's explained in these books, you know. So I'm not such a fan of authors that don't hold their own in that area. So I love Philip Permit and Robert Simmons for that reason. But mostly, again, it's really been our CCP grads, our certified crystal practitioners, who show me, inspire me, teach me every day what you can do with this knowledge, things that I didn't know. There are so many stories of transformation and growth like yours. I've lost count.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Just be so rewarding. I can't imagine, because thinking like all of the students that you've certified and just influenced, it's like you've had such an impact on this community and the world, because we're going out and we're doing all these amazing things. And so I can't imagine how you must feel.
And they are global, you know, they're all over the world. And that's what makes me so excited. I think my team just recently told me we have graduates in 52 different countries around the world, over 2,300 successful graduates. So I'm just beyond, you know, beaming excited that we're all a part of this magic.
It's funny, when I was first looking to get certified, I was hesitant about doing an online course. Like I had mentioned to you previously, I'm very old school. Like I love to be just a student in anything that I'm passionate about. So I was originally envisioning like going to a classroom and like having a pen and paper and like being able to be in person. Like I remember school being like, and it's just, I can't stress enough how like taking your course, I literally felt like I was sitting in a classroom with you. Like it was just so, your energy is just incredible. And the course was just amazing for me. So I know that like a ton of people listening right now are either students that have recently graduated with you or are planning on taking your courses, because the first thing I tell people when they tell me that they want to do what I do or are like very interested in crystals and want to learn more, and I'm like, if you're serious about it, you need to check out Hibiscus Moon, because your course just really was something that I had no idea that I thought originally I was taking it to understand and be able to explain to others. But what happened after, like the confidence that it instilled in me and like how I just felt like I wanted to share with the world, I really ran with it. So I think that anyone listening, if you're even remotely interested, which obviously you are in crystals, learning as much as you can and educating yourself is so important.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that about you, Amanda, is that you were like, I don't know, an online school, how this is going to work. And well, now, of course, that we've gone through 2020, everybody's kind of like figured out how to do everything on Zoom, right? Yeah. But we were doing it way before that. And I definitely think, people get scared, like the science. They're like, oh, I never liked science in school. I don't want to get involved in all of that. But we teach it in a way that's really easy to understand and a way that makes it stick. And I'm not, it might sound like I'm bragging, but I am super passionate about this and I can't hold my energy back, like I can't be any other way about it. And I think that gets everybody else really excited and confident and into it. And then they get excited about the science, which is hysterical. I love that. I love that.
That's so funny. I actually have a funny story to share with you. So I'm sure you remember, but when we met in Tucson, that was about 5 years ago, and you were doing a meetup. Mm-hmm. And I was in Tucson with a girlfriend of mine, and I was so nervous to meet you. Like, I can't tell you how nervous I was. And so we were there maybe like 20 or 30 minutes early. And so my girlfriend was like, you need to like relax. She was like, let's go have a glass of champagne. She's like, we'll have a glass of champagne. It'll be totally fine. You're going to relax. And I rarely drink. So I was like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. So we went and we had a glass of champagne, and I drank it really quick because I'm just not used to drinking. And she was like, okay, one more and then we're going to go. So I had another glass of champagne and I was like, okay, I'm so excited. I'm not nervous anymore. I'm going to meet this Hibiscus Moon. This is going to be the best day ever. So we walked over and you were mingling with people. And by the way, everyone, you are the most genuine and kind person. And it was so lovely meeting you. But prior to actually speaking to you for the first time, I was talking with one of your team members and I was explaining about how I was hesitant to take this online course and I'm so glad I did. And she was like, oh, well, would you mind sharing with us? Like, do you mind if I just record this? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like feeling the champagne a little bit. Yeah. And so I have to this day no idea what I said. Like I just it wasn't the champagne. It was like a combination of like the nerves and just, I was now on camera. And so I don't know what you did with that, but I don't know that I ever need to hear it. But yeah, so whenever I think back to meeting you, that's just, and it's so funny too, because now this morning, like before our call, I was thinking how much has changed because I was sitting having my celery juice and quite a glass of champagne. But yeah, it was just a really funny experience that I haven't shared with you before. So
I'm so glad you shared that with me because first of all, I should have gone with you to get that glass of champagne that day because I was just as nervous.
Right.
The adrenaline is like what pumped me through. I always get nervous before those things. And even before teaching a class, it just never gets old for me, and I think that's good. I think that's a good thing, that I don't feel like, this is old hat, It's still very exciting for me, but that's funny. And I know where that video is, and it's on YouTube, I think, and on our website somewhere, but now I know we have a drunk Amanda on the video. No, you didn't seem you didn't seem that way at all, but that was a really good idea. Somebody should have suggested that to me that day. I would have gone with you.
It was so funny. My friend's face, I drank the first one really quick, and she was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll have another one and then we'll just go meet. And so it was so funny. And you were so lovely. That was I still remember that day. It was so nice meeting you in person. And
so do I. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember meeting you like it was yesterday, and you were so sweet and just a beautiful soul energy. You can tell just radiating from you.
Do you have any future plans of doing any meetups or for your students?
Well, I would like to do Tucson next year for sure. I missed out this year. So hopefully, and if we do, then we will do that.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. Yeah. We've done it in different ways, like a book signing, kind of like a field trip through the Pueblo show. Yeah. I know you love the Pueblo show, right?
I love all of them.
Yeah. So there's lots of different, I know. I love all of them too. How do you pick a favorite? But
awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully we get to go this year.
That would be amazing.
And I'm sure we will.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so funny too, because a few years ago, I actually had a photo that we took together, and I put it on my vision board because it was just a dream of mine to work with you. So the fact that we're recording this episode today for our 50th podcast episode means so much to me. And I truly believe that in the future.
Can you send that photo to me?
I will. Yes, I have it.
I'll use it. I'll put it in our newsletter.
Oh my goodness. And I have so many plans for the future, and I'm excited. I hope that we can work together again in the future. It would be awesome.
Yes. Me too. And I'm so thrilled to see what you come up with, because you have been one of the most creative crystal practitioners, and you're always doing something new, and you do beautiful work. And I love that you've done this podcast. You do the calendar. I use the facial roller all the time. Your facial roller, and the live crystal sales. That's a whole new world to me that I don't know. I never dipped into live Instagram crystal sales. I was out of selling crystals by the time that got big, but that looks like a ton of fun. So much. And I mean, you're just rocking it. No pun intended.
Thank you. Okay. So to wrap this up, if anyone is interested in learning more about you or your courses or what you've got going on, where can we find you?
Okay. Go to hibiscusmoon.com/gift. That way you get this really great gift it's actually an e-kit. It's a lot of little goodies on how to create your own sacred space with crystals. And you're also subscribing to my newsletter, so you'll know about everything that's going on. So it's hibiscusmoon.com/gift.
Awesome. And then on Instagram at Hibiscus Moon.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, great. And I'm actually subscribed to your newsletters on both my personal and our business, because I never want to miss one. So I get 2 of each. Yeah, they're the best, and I love them. So highly recommend.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been an honor, and I'm so excited.
It's been my pleasure and privilege. Thank you for inviting me, Amanda.
Thanks so much for listening. If today's episode inspired you, make sure to rate us 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe. Also remember to follow GoLightly Crystals on Instagram and visit GoLightlyHealing.com to find today's show notes and anything else you might need to help you live your best life. Until next time, keep your crystals cleansed, chakras balanced, and affirmations on repeat.